The morning began quietly, the kind of silence that wraps itself around you and settles deep into your bones. I was on the dock, a steaming mug of black coffee warming my hands, watching the morning mist lift off the lake like a ghost slowly disappearing. This quiet, that earned after decades of disciplined quiet, was mine. It had taken 35 years as an army engineer to understand and appreciate it. This spot, this small slice of water and woods, was the only place that ever truly felt like home. Helen, my wife, and I had built this dock ourselves, board by board, the summer after my last deployment. Every nail, every plank, carried memory of our laughter, our conversation, the easy rhythm of two people creating something together. Then, a low grinding roar shattered the peace. It wasn't a fishing boat, wasn't the hum of a morning ferry. It was the unmistakable growl of heavy machinery, diesel engines complaining as they crawled over stone and earth. I froze, my coffee forgotten in my hand. Across the water, a convoy had appeared. Construction trucks, a bulldozer, a flatbed carrying prefab walls, a cement mixer rolling over the old causeway connecting the mainland to my island. My island. My father had purchased this 7-acre chunk of granite and pine in 1954. He called it his splinter of heaven. Over 70 years, it had remained in my family, passed down until it landed in my name. It was mine, documented on every tax record, every county map, every filing. I walked to the edge of the shore, watching as the lead truck, a Ford emblazoned with the Maple Shores Community Association logo, lumbered onto my land without hesitation. Confusion hit first. This had to be a mistake, a driver lost, a surveyor who couldn't read a map. I grabbed my old John boat and rowed the 30 yards across the water to intercept them. By the time I stepped onto the gravel path, a woman was waiting. She appeared to be in her 50s, crisp khakis, polo shirt with the Maple Shores logo, clipboard in hand like armor. "Can I help you?" she asked, though her tone made it clear. "State your business and leave." "I'm Jack Rains," I said. "I own this island. I think your crew has made a mistake." She looked down at her clipboard, then back up at me, a small smirk playing on her lips. "No mistake, Mr. Rains. I'm Karen Hensley, president of the HOA. This is designated common property. We're beginning phase 3 of the community expansion today." I blinked. Common property? This land had been in my family for 3 generations. Private property. She tapped the clipboard. "According to our updated plat, this island is part of the Maple Shores development plan. We're building 23 rental cabins, a wonderful amenity for our residents." I took a deep breath, forcing my voice calm. Engineers solve problems, not by shouting. "Ma'am, with all due respect, your plats are wrong. I have the deed. I can show it to you." Her smirk didn't falter. That was my first mistake, admitting that I had to prove something that was already mine. The bulldozer rumbled behind her, metal scraping rock and gravel. I could see the flatbed inching forward, the mixer pouring its first load. And all I could do was stand there, trying to process the audacity of it. They were destroying what Helen and I had built with our own hands. I went home, my mind spinning. I had to find that deed. Helen had always handled the paperwork, meticulous, organized, every document in its proper place. But when I opened the filing cabinet and searched the expected folders, the deed wasn't there. Panic and frustration started to coil in my chest. 3 hours I spent turning the office upside down. Every drawer, every cabinet, every box in the attic, even the safe, it was as if the deed had vanished into thin air. Nothing. My stomach sank. Without that paper, my ownership was just a story, and stories don't hold up in court. A week later, the next blow arrived. A certified letter from the Maple Shores Community Association. I opened it to find a formal notice of encroachment, $250 for obstructing land use. Their crime. My small fire pit and 2 chairs near the shore. They were building on my land, and they were billing me for being there. My hands shook as I read the words. Rage began to build, a slow, searing fire fueled by the memory of Helen. That island had been ours, our sanctuary. The dock they were destroying had been the first project we ever built together, and I could remember her laughing as I mishit a nail, the smell of freshly cut pine filling the air. Our hands entwined, dangling over the water at sunset, it was all being erased. The next morning, I returned to the island. Chainsaws screamed across the water as the crew cleared trees and prepped foundations. Karen Hensley stood directing, her clipboard in hand like a weapon. I approached her directly. "This has to stop," I said, my voice firmer now. "You are on private property. You are destroying a memorial to my late wife. I am asking you politely to leave." Her face held a mask of patronizing pity. She didn't even glance at the falling trees, the scattered wood. She looked only at me. "Mr. Rains, I understand this is emotional for you, but you need to see the bigger picture. Once these cabins are built, your property value will double. You should be thanking us." I realized then that reasoning with her was pointless. She saw my grief as weakness, my history as an obstacle to progress. She signaled the bulldozer operator, "Clear the shoreline." I screamed, "Stop! That's my dock." But the machine roared to life. Splinters flew, planks buckled, and in seconds the dock, our creation, our memories, was reduced to a pile of broken lumber floating in the water. All I could do was watch, powerless. I called the county planning office, hoping someone would intervene. I filed a formal complaint for illegal construction and trespass, detailing the property lines, the ownership history, and the destruction of the dock. For 2 weeks, all I heard was the relentless hammering and buzzing of saws across the lake. Then, a call. An inspector would come to the site, and I could be present. Relief flared briefly. Finally, someone might listen. The inspector arrived, a tired-looking man with a safety vest and clipboard. Before I could speak, a sleek black sedan pulled up behind him. Out stepped Karen Hensley, followed by a lawyer carrying a leather briefcase. The tension hit me in waves. I explained calmly, pointing to where the dock had stood, tracing the island's history, the family legacy. The lawyer didn't respond. He simply opened a thick binder, filled with plats, soil reports, and environmental impact statements. "Mr. Harris," he said, handing the documents to the inspector, "these updated plats show the parcel is zoned for community expansion. Everything is in order." The inspector flipped through pages, eyes glazing over at the dense legal jargon. He looked at me, then at the HOA team, and finally back. "Looks like your paperwork is in order," he said to the lawyer. Then he turned to me, the look of someone who had already decided I was the problem. "It's a civil matter. Take it up with them." Hope drained from me that day. Karen's triumphant expression said it all. They had the right documents, and I had nothing. The next morning, they installed a 10-foot chain link fence across the causeway, pounding in steel posts, hanging a massive aluminum sign, "Private access, Maple Shores residents only. Violators will be prosecuted." I was literally locked out of my own island. Neighbors were sympathetic, but silent. Most were HOA members themselves. "That's terrible, Jack," they'd whisper. One man, George, leaned over the fence. "Karen fined Helen last week because the recycling bin was 6 inches too close to the curb. Don't get on her bad side." No one was willing to help. I was entirely alone. That weekend, while cleaning out my workshop, I stumbled on a faint glimmer of hope. Tucked away in an old chest was a rolled-up tube of paper tied with brittle string. Carefully, I unrolled it. A hand-drawn survey map dated 1956, showing the island as a separate parcel, my family's name listed as the owner. My heart raced. But my stomach sank as I saw the blank space for the county surveyor's signature and seal. It was a draft, beautiful but legally worthless. I had one last option: confront them directly at the HOA meeting. The room was full of residents. Karen sat at the front, running the meeting like a drill sergeant. I stood, voice shaking with anger and desperation, and began explaining the situation. She cut me off before I could finish a sentence. "Mr. Rains, this issue has been resolved. We are not discussing it again." Laughter rippled from board members. Someone in the back snickered. I tried again, but she banged her gavel. "If you continue to disrupt this meeting, you will be removed and banned from all future meetings." I left with my head held high, but inside I felt smaller, invisible. That night, I stood at the shoreline where the dock had been, staring across at the floodlit island. The skeletons of cabins rose against the dark sky, generators humming late into the night. The anger, the desperation, even the humiliation had burned away, leaving something new, cold, quiet, and as hard as granite. I watched them build, and a new thought formed: let them finish. I had been an engineer my entire life. Engineers prove things. I would prove this. For the next several months, The sounds of construction became my constant companion. The beep of reversing trucks became my morning alarm. The whine of circular saws was the soundtrack of lunch. The percussive thud of nail guns was the final note as the sun dipped below the horizon. Spring melted into a hot, sticky summer, and I watched from my shoreline as 23 identical cabins sprang up from the scarred earth of my island. The walls went up first, followed by the roofing, the wiring, the plumbing. Picture windows were installed, large and clear, perfectly framing the lake. I could see the cabins from my porch. They looked like a tidy little village had appeared overnight. A village built on lies, on stolen ground, on the arrogance of a woman who thought she could rewrite history. From the perspective of anyone watching, especially Karen Hensley and her board, I must have seemed defeated. I stopped trying to cross the causeway. I ceased making calls. I appeared to go about my days like a man who had accepted defeat. I mowed my lawn in perfectly straight lines, spent hours on the lake in my john boat fishing for bass, and sat on the porch reading old engineering manuals. Karen would sometimes stand across the water, hands on hips, silently observing me. I'd offer a polite, empty wave. She would just stare triumphant, convinced of her victory. They grew more confident with each passing day. A large glossy sign appeared beside the chained gate, Maple Shores Lakeside Cabins, now accepting summer rentals. Vacation websites featured photos of sunlit cabins and glowing descriptions of pristine, untouched nature. My nature, the landscape I had nurtured for decades. Meanwhile, I worked quietly. My days were far from idle. Twice a week, I drove 30 miles to the county seat, spending long hours in the Public Records Archive, a cold, silent basement smelling of dust and old paper. I wasn't looking for my lost deed anymore. I knew it was gone. I was searching for theirs. I started with the updated plats their lawyer had brandished. It took a week of digging through chronological filings, but I eventually found the developer submission from the previous October. Everything was there, soil reports, environmental impact statements, the works, but I noticed a critical omission. For an official land transfer or boundary adjustment, the state registry must record it, not just the local county office. There was no state seal, no registration number. The developers, likely with Karen's approval, had filed locally to get construction permits, but they had skipped the final legal step. Their entire multi-million-dollar project rested on a legally worthless document. This was the first crack in their foundation. Next, I contacted an old friend. Earl Sutton had been the county surveyor for 40 years before retiring. We had served in the same engineering battalion decades apart, and I trusted him implicitly. I arrived at his home with a box of donuts and a problem he would understand. He examined the old and signed survey I had found, adjusting his bifocals to trace the lines my father had commissioned in the 1950s. "I remember this one," he said quietly. "Old man Hemlock did the survey. He was precise. See this symbol? That's an iron pin, 3/4 of an inch, driven 5 feet into the ground. Paper can lie, Jack, but iron and granite don't." He gave me the original coordinates for the 4 corner markers, recorded in his personal logbooks like sacred texts. Armed with that, I hired a modern surveying firm run by a young veteran I'd met through the VFW. I didn't tell them about the HOA, about the stolen land. I simply commissioned a technical boundary survey, cross-referencing Earl's coordinates with Army Corps of Engineers satellite data. 2 weeks later, a courier delivered a thick envelope. Inside was a certified survey map printed on heavy stock with a raised seal. The thick black line showed my property, and inside, scattered like red dots, were the precise GPS locations of all 23 cabins. Every single cabin, from front steps to back porch, was entirely on my land. I carefully folded the map and placed it in the bottom of Helen's hope chest. The weapon was ready. It only needed to be fired. A few days later, Karen Hensley gave an interview to the local newspaper. She stood in front of the new cabins, smiling broadly, and called the project a triumph of community vision. She spoke of overcoming challenges and dealing with a few bitter individuals resistant to progress. Her arrogance was perfect, exactly what I needed. She was proud of what she had stolen, and she displayed it for the world to see. The next morning, I dressed neatly, drove into town, and entered a small notary office. A kind woman behind the desk watched as I signed a single piece of paper, verifying my intent and claims. The seal pressed with a firm, satisfying thud. I folded the document carefully, slid it into a fresh envelope, and stepped into the sunlight. The first move had been made. The HOA didn't know it yet, but the first shot had been fired. Patience is a weapon, especially when the enemy thinks they've already won. Days later, one of Karen's minions appeared at my door. He called himself the head of community compliance, though it was obvious he used to work mall security. Without knocking, he slapped a notice on my door, a trespassing warning, accusing me of attempting to access HOA property. He had no idea the game had already begun. I spent the following weeks meticulously building my case. Every day, I combed through public records, cross-referenced plats, permits, environmental studies, and survey logs. What I lacked in legal training, I made up for with patience, precision, and experience as an engineer. I was constructing proof as methodically as a cabin's foundation, each facta beam supporting my eventual victory. The more I dug, the more mistakes I found in the HOA's filings. Their permits were all technically sound at the county level, but none of the crucial steps had been properly executed with the state registry. No record of boundary adjustments, no state approval for the land transfer. The multi-million-dollar project standing proudly on my island was hanging by a thread, legally invisible. I enlisted a surveyor, a young veteran with precision instruments and satellite connections, to conduct a full, detailed boundary survey. We worked quietly, measuring every corner, every edge, verifying coordinates against my father's original iron pins and the topographical data of the Army Corps. The result was undeniable. Every cabin they had built, every road they had cleared, was on my property. With this, I prepared the next step. A single, unassuming piece of paper, notarized, marked the beginning of the end. It was carefully worded, precise, and legally binding. I knew that when it reached the right hands, the HOA would no longer have the comfortable illusion of control. Karen Hensley, in her arrogance, continued her public displays of triumph. In local newspapers, she beamed with pride in front of the cabins, boasting about community vision and progress. She had no idea that every word, every photo, only reinforced the evidence I had been meticulously gathering. I made one more strategic call, to my old friend Earl, the retired county surveyor. I needed his testimony to confirm the authenticity of the historical markers. He agreed. He remembered each iron pin, each measurement from decades ago. His credibility as a former county surveyor would be pivotal in court. Everything was coming together. I had the maps, I had the survey, I had the notarized claim, and I had expert witnesses. The foundation for my victory was complete. While Karen's empire grew daily on my land, I was quietly building the legal machinery that would dismantle it. Finally, the day came. The court date arrived quietly, but my mind was anything but. I carried the maps, the survey data, the notarized claim, and Earl's sworn testimony. The courtroom was packed with neighbors, reporters, and of course, Karen Hensley and her team. Their confidence radiated like sunlight. They truly believed they owned the island. I waited patiently as preliminary motions were handled. When it was my turn, I stepped forward calmly, showing the court the certified survey map first. Each black line, each red dot of a cabin, was a precise representation of reality. I traced the cabin's positions with my finger, showing that every structure, every foundation, every inch of their community expansion sat squarely on my land. Karen's smug expression faltered, just slightly. The room was silent. I handed the notarized claim to the judge. It was clear, precise, and undeniable. Earl Sutton, called as an expert witness, confirmed the original coordinates and the historical placement of every boundary marker. His testimony was precise, authoritative, and impossible to refute. Then came the final blow, the updated plats Karen's lawyer had brandished at the county inspector. The court examined them closely. Without state registration, they were meaningless. The HOA's multi-million-dollar project, built with arrogance and disregard, was legally invalid. The judge leaned back, reviewing the evidence. Karen's lawyer sputtered, flipping through documents, but it was too late. The verdict was clear. The HOA had built on private property without proper authorization. Every cabin, every fence, every alteration had been illegal. A hush fell over the courtroom. Karen Hensley's face went pale, her confidence shattered. I felt a calm satisfaction, the slow, steady payoff of months of planning and patience. The empire she had thought was untouchable was now crumbling under the weight of truth and meticulous preparation. The ruling was explicit: immediate cessation of construction, removal of all cabins, restoration of the island to its rightful owner, me. It was more than just legal victory. It was the reclamation of decades of memory, love, and labor. My family's legacy, nearly stolen, was safe once again. As I stepped out of the courtroom, neighbors and reporters buzzing around, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. The dock might have been destroyed, the cabins might have scarred the land temporarily, but the truth had a weight far greater than steel and timber. My island, my memories, my family's legacy, were finally restored. And from that moment, the island returned to its rightful rhythm, the quiet, peaceful, earned silence that had first drawn me to it so many years ago.